is where we discuss the possibilities.
Hi guys, I'm Joe Klimczewski, founder of The Diet Doc, here with Kori Probst, who is our health psychologist, and we are in the third part of this, right, Kori?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, third part of, I'm going to get this wrong, freedom from food fear. You have a better way of saying that.
Moving from food fear to food freedom.
Perfect.
For a little bit.
Okay. And going along with your love of alliteration, we've talked about the moralization of food. We've talked about a macro perspective of macronutrients. Now we're going to talk about metabolism, but I don't think you mean that in a way of just normal metabolic physiology, but what kind of metabolism are you talking about?
Yeah, well, I think everyone listening hears the word and they automatically think about physical metabolism, biological metabolism, how our body processes food and the amount of energy we're using based on what we're doing. And I've talked a lot about our emotional metabolism and our relational metabolism. It's kind of like the pulse of different contexts and spheres of our lives. And yes, while we're talking about food freedom comes from instituting and developing a level of awareness around every area of our lives and what it means to us and what's important about each of those areas and how we want to move into them from a space of compassion and openness and curiosity and adventure and self-discovery, really. So like I did with macro and nutrients, looking up the definition, I wanted to see if there was a definition of metabolism that didn't have anything to do with food. And there is.
You're such a nonconformist. All right, lay it on me.
So, I mean, it's not super awe-inspiring or anything, but it's the complex of all the chemical and physical processes within a living cell that are necessary for the maintenance of life.
That sounds pretty biological. I'm not sure.
Physical and chemical. Let's go back to how emotions are energy
Okay.
and how emotions create chemical processes in our bodies, you know, with hormonal shifts and changes. And so when we look at it from that perspective, metabolism has a much greater meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so freedom from fear relating to food. I'm going to let you just roll this out. Go ahead. Go.
You can get it right again, Joe, but that's okay.
I know I didn't, but it'll be in the show notes. I'm just going with the freedom from fear, like a Martin Luther King Jr. kind of thing here.
Food freedom. Okay. So
Okay.
reminder, guys, 4 legs of this stool of food freedom: macronutrients, metabolism, mindfulness, and moralization. Yes, we've talked a little bit about each of them throughout the last 2 episodes, but so today, metabolism. I, true to form, came up with an acronym, Joe, and it's metabolism. Imagine that. So each letter of the word metabolism represents an important factor in helping us move through that process of development to food freedom. The M, I want to see if you can guess.
No, there's like 17 letters.
Is for M.
You should write children's books. They would love you. You can just make everything so colorful.
It's funny you say that. My mom wants to write children's books, so maybe we should do that together.
Yeah, big collaboration.
And my sister could be the artist because I can't draw. We're like, so okay, I won't make you guess. M, there's 2 words that I think are important, 2 concepts that go with M, and it's meaning. You've heard me say that in this introduction, and movement. Mm-hmm. So meaning is being able to ask, what is truly important to me here? And when I ask that question, all of these beliefs and associations and rules and things come up for me that I've been following for a long time. And like we've mentioned before, that may not even be appropriate for my life right now. Maybe they worked long ago. Maybe they were effective when I was younger. But in this phase of my life, in this period, at this age, you know what? The meaning of things has changed for me. And so we need to be able to ask ourselves, what is meaningful to me? And think of that from all the different sectors of our lives, relationally, developmentally, physically, all of those different spheres. And then the other M that I think is important is movement. Now, this one is an important one for me because, and for, I'm going to say everyone, I have so many clients who come to me who have married movement and weight loss. Exercise has become tied to and defined by how much weight loss or fat loss or change in the body from an external perspective it can create. And it's also tied to food in so many ways. So, you know, if I overeat in this meal, then I need to exercise in order to work off those extra calories. Now, guys, I have to say this because I fear that when I say these things, people are going to take it in a very black and white way, like that's all bad or all good or it has to be this way. And this is the inherent problem. And I'm not saying that. If we go into a situation like that and we're like, oh, well, I ate a little bit more of this today, and so now I have a little bit of glycogen that I can use, and maybe I can push a little harder in my workout, that's awesome. But if we go into it as a punishment and there's guilt and shame involved, that's completely different. So movement too, I think, involves asking what we truly enjoy doing and what is energy producing, as opposed to going into an exercise session and needing it and thinking that it has to be this all out, I need to end up on the floor completely exhausted sort of a situation. What do you think about those things so far?
Well, you really brought my mind back to the easier name that we're dealing with in this, which is eating like a normal person. And as soon as you talked about tying those two things together, that every time I move, every time I exercise, it's always in relation to my weight or some kind of progress I'm trying to make or regression I'm trying to fight, instead of it's just what I like to do. I need to train and exercise because I want to be a fit, healthy person. That's, as you said, a meaning, a value that doesn't have to be tied closely. And I think that's a big part of being, quote, normal. You know, we're trying to emphasize that you don't have to feel all this pressure and all this moralization about your status, meal to meal, day to day, every time you step on the scale. So I think that's a really good, extremely positive first point.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And, you know, there is research that shows, say you're a person who doesn't exercise regularly. You haven't necessarily found something that is enjoyable for you or that you've been able so far to incorporate into a regular habit, right? Well, the research shows that if we focus less on what we're going to get later as a result of regular exercise, and we focus more on, I do this because, oh my gosh, I feel so much more energized when I'm done. Just knowing that I'm moving my body and giving myself the gift of movement makes me feel optimistic and positive and excited. I don't always want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to work out and exercise, but I wouldn't ever not necessarily do it because under certain circumstances, of course, but I feel so much better throughout the day. And even in the moment, I'm like, oh, this feels so good. I'm so glad I did it. But I've also tied it to things that are enjoyable for me. So if I'm on the treadmill, for example, and I say treadmill and some people are like, oh my God, I hate that. And that's totally fine. One of the beautiful things is that we don't have to do everything that everyone else does. Find something that you enjoy. But the treadmill for me, if I'm not doing something that's higher intensity, it means I get to read a book or I get to listen to a podcast. So I've tied it to things that are super enjoyable for me and fun, and that are going to impact me not just right now, not just for the rest of my day, but in an enduring way as well. So M, okay, meaning and movement. E, I have 2 words for E as well. This became a very difficult.
This is no longer an alliteration. That's just, it's not happening.
It's not an alliteration. It's an acronym.
Acronym, right.
But that was an alliteration. Acronym, alliteration. Is everyone completely confused now?
Right. We've lost everybody.
Right. So the E of metabolism stands for emotions and energy. So emotions are energy, guys. And those of you who follow me have heard me discuss this and what it means. I'm not going to get into like the nuts and bolts of that. But in order to move into food freedom, okay, and away from fear and shame and guilt, we have to understand that all emotions are valid and necessary and appropriate. We're human. We have them. Okay, we have to expect that. And they can be information for us about what's important. So when we experience one, oh, I'm having an experience of anxiety right now. Something's important. There was a shift in your energy, a shift in whatever occurred internally, sensationally in your body. Your senses literally changed to indicate something's occurring right now. And that means something shifted. Could be internally, could be externally in your context. And you might begin to learn and practice asking yourself the question, what's important to me right now? Okay. T of metabolism is for trust. Okay. And for those of us who have done everything by the book of someone else, or has followed the rules of a coach forever, or has been chronically dieting and has just done whatever the diet plan said to do, and whatever this person, this fitness guru said was going to be optimal, it can take time and practice to learn to trust yourself. And it involves asking tough questions. Again, come back to meaning. What's really important to me? How do I want to feel? Does doing this and taking this action give me the space to be able to pursue those other things that I've put on the back burner forever and just kind of let go by the wayside? So that's trust. I have 2 words for A. Okay.
Of course you do.
Well, so what's funny about this is when I created the ABCs of motivation, my online course,
It went to Z.
there was actually an ampersand at the end. Like I couldn't stop at Z, to be honest. So yes, I feel like I am back in that space right now. A, guys, of metabolism, awareness and advocate. Okay, so if we're to move out of fear and guilt and shame and into a sense of freedom, number 1 ground level foundational skill to begin practicing is awareness. Asking ourselves the tough questions, asking ourselves why we do what we do, where do these rules come from that I've been following, what's important to me, and really practicing a level of presence. So most of us are walking around and going through our lives in kind of go through the motions mode and zombie mode, and we're living in zombie land. we're reading a book and we get through an entire chapter and we can't say at all what we just read, or we just had an entire conversation with a person and we can't say what that person just conveyed to us. We're oblivious a lot of the time. So we need to learn to develop a level of awareness about ourselves and about our environments and other people. And then to practice becoming, and you've heard me say this before, a compassionate advocate for ourselves, rather than always landing in that space of criticism and contempt for who we are and what we do and how we look and the way we eat. And so part of that is taking an assessment. And you know, in the emotional eating course that I'm writing right now, Joe, the We Eat How We Live course, I give people, it's 10 tips just to begin incorporating into their lives, maybe one tip for 1 week, and then we add on another tip and another tip to build those habits gradually for instituting that compassion and really taking stock of, am I being an advocate for myself? Or is this all about I'm broken and I need to be fixed and I'm not good enough and I'm not okay? Underneath it all, sometimes that's the overwhelming belief is I'm not worthy the way that I am. So the B of metabolism stands for beliefs. Really getting in touch with the associations that we have, because a lot of times we're being driven by certain beliefs and ways of thinking. They're driving our behavior and our thinking, and we're not even cognizant of it until we take a step back and we breathe and allow ourselves a pause to say, what's going on here? What is driving me right now? What's the motivation for this behavior? So that's beliefs. How are we doing, Joe?
I have a plane next Friday I have to catch. So how many more like 2 and 3 letters for every letter you have?
Okay, I will wrap this up quickly. We're halfway through metabolism. METAB. So O is openness. You guys know what openness is, having an open mind, okay? Assessing where your rigidity lies. Leadership, okay? Integrity. Self-esteem. Now, that's a big one. We could do a whole other podcast on self-esteem, Joe, but I do kind of want to hit on this one a little bit. So self-esteem, because you're going to hear a lot of definitions thrown around about what self-esteem is, and it's the feeling that we are appropriate for our lives. Now, I can't remember where I heard that or where I read that, but is that not an awesome definition of self-esteem? To feel appropriate for our lives? How many people can actually say that is the big thing?
I think, I immediately explode mentally into the whole belief structure of life, and I won't get into all of this, but when you do feel that you are autonomous with your life and you're not preordained, I guess would be kind of a religious way to say it, or there's a deity controlling your life, you've got heaven, hell, all this, and you're just walking through the motions. That's the whole thing that Dr. Dweck has always talked about, is that's a closed-minded system where nothing matters, because if you just follow the right rules, the right deity, everything's going to be fine, instead of an absurdist or existential way of viewing things, which is, this is my one life. And every day matters, every decision matters, even though that makes it tilt more towards self-responsibility. It means you can be happy. And that's what I hear you saying, which is, am I appropriate for my life? It's your freaking life.
Right.
I mean, if you can't be appropriate for it, who can?
Exactly.
So.
And you said the word happy, and And I think that's maybe one of the problems, is that everyone believes that they need to be happy all the time in order for their lives to be good and rich and meaningful and purposeful. And good luck to you. Good luck to you. If that is your goal and you are chasing happiness, you are going to be disappointed a lot all the time. And that's what I mean by accepting and embracing every emotion. Yeah, it's important to be happy. It's important. It's not imperative to be happy, to live a very meaningful and purposeful life. So when I hear self-esteem, and I'm going to wrap this up into mastery too, which is the final M of metabolism, what I understand it to be is to live with a sense of realism. Okay, this is here. This is what is in front of me right now. I may not like this. It may not be ideal. I would very much like to shift and change this. And yet, I know that I don't necessarily have to work right now in the moment to shift and change it. It's already shifting and changing itself. Nothing is permanent. And when we talk about emotions, that's where people get into trouble too, is they believe this is never going to change. It's always going to stay this way. And it won't, guys. But it takes practice and reflection and a sense of awareness to actually come to that insight and feel it within yourself. So there's realism, there's flexibility, there's this sense of adaptability, there's resilience, there's creativity, go back to our previous episodes, there's kindness, there's compassion, and then there's, I'm going to show up however I am right now, in this moment, in this size body, with whatever weight it says on the scale, with all the mistakes and crappy behavior that I've engaged in my life, but also awesome stuff. I am going to show up. Because like you said, Joe, we get one life. We get this one day. We actually get this 1 second. This 1 second will never be here again. So I want to look into your eyes and pay attention to you right now. And when you're talking, I want to listen to learn instead of listen to say, no, you're wrong, or no, I'm right. Metabolism, because all of that stuff, guys, that affects the physical, the biological, and the chemical processes within our bodies for the maintenance of our best lives.
And that, Kori, allows us to normalize our eating behavior. I was just this morning, somebody came into my office, a friend that I don't see very often, and he was talking about a recent trip to Europe and said, you know, we talked about how people over there just don't focus on food as, what am I going to eat? When's my next meal? What time is it? And it's just, you know, they don't have the obesity problem because there is more of a normalization, a non-moralization of food. And that's what it means.
They expect to enjoy food too, though. It's not just like we eat for fuel. I'm sorry, guys. Food should be enjoyable. There, I'm using the word should. The individuals who I see who are like, I wish that I could just eat for fuel, are the ones who have the most entrenched beliefs that food, like, they're scared of food. There is that huge amount of food fear.
So what are we going to talk about next? What's the fourth M?
This was the second M.
No, we had moralization. We had moralization, macros, macronutrients.
We already covered moralization. I guess we haven't.
That was more of the intro, and then we keep dipping back to it.
Mindfulness, then.
Mindfulness.
That is the fourth one. Yes.
That's what we're going to talk about next.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, you guys, in the show notes, you will have the acronym metabolism and the 75 words under each letter that Kori threw out there. And we'll let our producer, Steve, write all that out for you. He's going to love you for this one, Kori.
Yes. Love you, Steve.
All right, guys. And we'll see you next time for mindfulness in eating like a normal person. Thank you guys for listening.